Hello, World Wide Web. I'm Dagger Shadow, the internet personality with the best hair, and welcome back to
The Summer of Freddy vs. Jason!
Today we're going to take a look at the third movie in the Friday the 13th franchise, Friday the 13th, Part 3, in 3D. Except we're not looking at it in 3D. I still watched it in 3D, with the 3D glasses and everything, except it's red and blue 3D, which is painful to watch, doesn't look very good, and leaves my eyes fucked up for a few hours after the movie. Kinda like that. The thing is, while 3D movies were not new, they were just starting to get back into vogue when Friday the 13th Part 3 rolled around. It was the first major movie of the decade to be done up in 3D, and was kind of the avatar of the 80s. The decision to make the movie in 3D came from the fact that the studio really didn't know what else to do with another sequel yet, and capitalizing on the start of a potential 3D craze would at least give a better chance for the movie to succeed financially. One problem with this, though, is that means they didn't have any other ideas on how to make an interesting Friday the 13th movie before they started filming. It's not all bad, the characters are unique enough, and the setup does work. Just according to the cast, the scenes were set up in a kind of way to figure out how to utilize the 3D to the fullest effect, instead of things like plot development, or expanding the lore, or, building the characters. In any case, Friday the 13th Part 3 is about a group of teenagers who go down into the woods and are killed by Jason Voorhees. That's it. It's really the easiest synopsis I've ever had to give for any movie. So, let's take a look at Friday the 13th Part 3 in 2D and see Jason kill a bunch of teenagers. In detail. Eventually. The movie starts out by recapping the ending of the last one, but unlike Part 2, which frames the scenes in memories and nightmares, Part 3 just plays the ending of the last movie, even going so far as to start the movie out with a reminder that you will need your 3D glasses eventually, even though the first chunk is entirely in 2D. Also, it doesn't do anything to clear up the ending of Part 2. Especially when the first new footage is a continuity error. Jason still had the machete lodged in his arm when he broke through the window and attacked Ginny. Don't worry, I'm not going to spend the whole review bitching and moaning, at least not non-stop, because it's time for the opening credits in pseudo 3D. At least if my version is anything to go by, the pop-out scenes aren't actually stereoscopic. But there's still something to like here, the fucking music. It's a bit weird for horror, but I kinda like it. It's sort of a proto-electronica tribute to 50s science fiction soundtracks with a sweet bass line to boot. Oh, yeah, and the movie is directed by Steve Miner, not Miller. Just like the last one. Anyway, on with the movie. I'm just going to point out, yes, I do have the Blu-ray. That doesn't stop this movie from being incredibly fuzzy around the edges, which actually isn't the part of the visuals that bothers me.
God damn it, Harold! I spent all day yesterday washing your clothes. Look what you're doing to them. You know I work very hard around here trying to keep...
Yeah, if you don't like throw shit in your face styles of 3D cinematography, well, sucks to be you. This is husband and wife Harold and Edna Hockett, played by Steve Susskind and Sherry Moggins, respectively. They live in the area around Crystal Lake and hate each other. However, there's news on the TV.
Bodies were found literally strewn over the 4-square-mile campground in the remote lake region.
I fucking get it! Stop! It hasn't even been a minute since the last face poke scene. The news story covers the events of Part 2 as something that happened just last night, but still does nothing to answer how the hell Ginny survived, or maybe it does and Edna just turns the TV off before they get to it. Because someone is sulking around in their home/business, which of course she assumes is just Harold being a bad husband. Harold, though, is shocked to discover one of his rabbits has been horribly killed.
Do something like this.
Really? Really, you got nothing better to do with your day? Like maybe comment on how fucking obvious the wires holding the puppet were? Scaring the shit out of him, Harold runs off to take care of that problem rather directly. Of course, now that the shit has officially started, it doesn't take long for Jason to make his move. You're not gonna do that every time something goes straight to the camera? I'm not Cleavers or anything like that. I'm an asshole. I'm not insane. Right. With Harold out of the way, that means Edna is left all alone to investigate those strange noises, wondering what they might be. Yeah. Thanks for that. One knitting needle through the fucking neck later, and it's time to introduce some more characters. He's not even trying to hide it anymore. Now, who the hell holds a baseball bat like that at waist height? Anyway, this van holds the characters for our big friendly get-together and quadruple date, such as Chris, played by Dana Kimmel, and Shelley.
Hey, Shelley, come on out and meet your date.
Bring her to me!
Go forth, my servants, and return with many wenches that I may grope at my leisure.
Get bent, goat face.
As well as Andy and Debbie, played by Jeffrey Rogers and Tracy Savage. Oh yeah, and that other thing I forgot to mention.
Ah! God damn it, Shelley. Why do you always have to be such an asshole? I beg your pardon. I'm not an asshole. I'm an actor.
Shelley is played by Larry Zerner. Also, he's not that much of an actor, as I could only find 7 other things he worked on past this movie. Which is actually kind of surprising when, if you ask me, he's probably one of the better actors in the movie. The group stopped off here to pick up the last member of their Bad Decision Brigade, Vera, played by Catherine Parks.
So, which one's my date?
Hi.
If you'll excuse me for a second, I can't believe I forgot to pack my holy water.
Hey, the van's on fire!
Well, that escalated quickly. If you're wondering how in the hell there was any situation that would cause the van to suddenly burst into flame, don't. It was just the 2 stoners in the back that they also didn't bother to establish until they started hotboxing the thing. The lady would be Chili, played by Rachel Howard, and the Tommy Chong-looking motherfucker is Chuck, played by David Katims. Oh, and lest we forget...
Hey, let's share the wealth with those less fortunate up front here, huh?
Lady, you do realize it's better to hand the butt part over instead of the smoldering tip in someone's face, right? No time for weed etiquette anyhow, as suddenly the police are on their tail. Unfortunately, they brought an absolute ass-ton of grass with them for this trip, and pretty much everyone has to help in scarfing it down before they get pulled over, so the cops won't arrest them. Which is something I probably could have omitted entirely, as them just scarfing handfuls of weed doesn't have any effect on the behavior in the slightest in this movie. And that is some high tolerance. Or bad weed. The cops, however, were just here to establish that their little summer home by the lake happens to be close by to Harold and Edna's store, which is where the cops were going to collect the bodies. However, rubbernecking at cadavers almost makes Chris run over another body in the road, one that is quite alive. Abel, played by David Wiley. He's pretty much here because Crazy Ralph's a little too dead for this part now.
I found this today. There were other parts of the body.
That's an eyeball!
But he said he wanted me to have this.
I wanted the cock and balls, but well, he was very stubborn about that.
I have warned thee. I have warned thee.
Ah, great. Now the movie's going all Tumblr pun thread on me while trying to poke out my eye with an eye. In case there is any doubt, they don't heed his warning, and he never comes up again. This means the group can make it down to Chris's old getaway, Higgins Haven, and start to unpack. But the door is already open.
Rick!
Introducing the last friend of the quadruple date, Rick, played by Paul Kratka. Also, as far as I can tell, he actually is not romantically involved in Chris, like, anymore.
Did I do something wrong? Did I?
Well, if you mean that your actions could potentially land you 20 years in prison, then, yeah, I'd say that's pretty wrong. However, it's not that she doesn't ever want to touch this guy again, just that evidently 2 years ago she had a terrible experience out in these woods, and while taking this trip to get over her fear, wants to take it slow with her ex. Also, as far as I can tell, there was no reason to break up with him in the first place, but that's her story and she's sticking to it. She still has to unpack the rest of the bags, though.
It's my bag. I'll take care of it.
Shelley, what are you doing in there?
Just staying barely out of frame so the audience can't see him, even though it doesn't make any sense why the hell you couldn't.
Why aren't you down at the lake with everybody else?
Oh, they said they were going skinny dipping, and I'm not skinny enough.
Joke's on them. Cold water just cuts right through you without a layer of fat for insulation, and it's kind of hard to look sexy when you got blue fucking lips. Found that out the hard way. While the movie does establish character relationships and aspirations, none of them really progress all that much. Hell, even who's fucking who was already established before they made it down there, with Andy and Debbie bunking together, while Rick laments his perpetual blue balls. However, a sudden scream arrests their attention, and Chris rushes back to the house to find out what is amiss. Huh, looks like someone was standing a little too close to the 3D effects. Don't! But he's just playing around, so it's okay. Except for the fact that pretty much everyone hates him after this instead of only mildly disliking him. This takes just long enough that Shelley is able to convince Herrera to not hate him anymore, just mildly dislike him for a while, so they can head to the convenience store together.
I need some money.
Ooh. Hey, there isn't even any money in this thing! Of course, the throw comes up short, which sums up a new batch of characters into this movie, a biker gang, consisting of Fox, played by Gloria Charles, Ali, played by Nick Savage, and Loco, played by Kevin O'Brien. And they're playing the movie's title music in this place? I like it, but geez. For some reason, these bikers aren't much for just taking the money and going, but rather enforcing polite manners, and perhaps enacting a small fine. A fine that increases when Shelley's terrible driving causes Ali to kindly remind him about the rules of the road. There, now he can easily stick his head out of the window and see if the path is clear. Showing off his newfound knowledge, Shelley takes off, then turns around to carefully ram into the bike again without hitting Ali in the process. Ah, such a quick learner. Okay, I'm just fucking around, and the biker gang is pissed. Almost as much as me now that we have another 3D segment to endure.
This is all the exercise I need.
That was close.
Oh yeah, I have to admit, getting hit in the fucking head is pretty close. When Shelley arrives back at the house, everyone is shocked to see damage to the car. This allows him to flex for the masses as the total badass who saved Vera from the nasty motorcycle gang. Problem was this was Rick's car he fucked up, so after letting him know it'll buff right out, they leave, and everyone completely forgets Shelley's heroism, going back to finding him an annoying burden. Rick and Chris, however, split off from the group for some alone time, right when another person sneaks into their homestead, ready to perform nefarious deeds. The Bikers, which you probably saw coming considering I bothered to mention who played them. They plan to siphon the gas from their van and use it to burn the barn to the ground. Strangely enough, Fox is suddenly not too enthusiastic about revenge, but Ali and Loco insist they have to get even. For fuck's sake, throwing into the camera doesn't even work as well. So while they do all the busy work, Fox just scopes out the barn to see if there's anything worth spending some film on in there.
What the hell you doing? Get off that thing!
Ah, fine, you want to be like that, motherfucker? Okay, let's go! Let's do this! Get back here! Get back here! Of course, when she slips out of frame for half a second, she disappears. This means Loco has to go inside to figure out where she could have gone off to, and why it is she won't answer him when he calls to her. Still amazes me that they got the artistic blood coming out of the mouth, but none coming from the wound or going down the body, leaving her outfit in amazing condition. In case there's any doubt who's responsible, Jason shows up and forks the fuck out of Loco, taking him out as well. Not to be left out of this massacre, Ali lets himself in the barn, and upon finding out his friends are a little too dead to help him with their arson thing, he moves to avenge their deaths. Unfortunately for him, though, this isn't the climax, so Jason's a pretty good fighter at the moment. It's still too early in the day for Jason to be bothered tracking down and murdering everyone else, though, so we wait until nightfall, where we see Chris and Rick have stopped off on the roadside for some exposition, while back at the house, shit gets thrown in our face, while the characters continue to make no progress on their relationships.
I was thinking that maybe, we could...
I don't think so.
What a nice thing to say. Thanks! No, I'm serious. After being stood up 3 or 4 times by people who didn't want to hurt my feelings by saying no, a plain open rejection is just amazingly good to hear. So all that stuff Shelley did earlier did fuck all for their chemistry. Hell, it's the closest thing the movie does to character development, so I shouldn't complain too much. For instance, when Chris explains to Rick what's bothering her, it turns out to be one of the least interesting horror stories you can think of.
I turned around, and standing there was this hideous-looking man.
Steve Buscemi? The story goes after Rick dropped her off, her parents were mad, so she ran out into the woods like an idiot, only to be attacked by the local slasher villain. How this made her fall out of love with Rick, I don't know, but the point is, Jason grabbed her, and then...
I don't know what happened after that, I just don't know.
Her story pretty much ends like Friday the 13th Part 2. She blacked out, woke up at home, and even her parents didn't bother filling in the rest of the plot to her. More important than 2 years ago, there's a problem in the present. Turns out the car battery died, and they're gonna have to walk back to the house. At least they should be safe on the journey, as Jason's not prowling far from the fresh stock of victims. You might have noticed the lake looks very fucking different this time around. Well, it's because it's not the same lake. Their filming location didn't even actually have a lake, so they just dug a hole and filled it with water. Also, this is not Jason, but Shelley in a Jason mask. Hockey mask. Vera's kinda ticked off, but he makes his case.
Being a jerk is better than being a nothing.
I never said you were nothing.
You don't have to say it. I could tell.
Isn't he supposed to be the comic relief appendix character nobody cares about? Because it looks to me like he has a hell of a lot more depth than Miss, oh, Jason attacked me 2 years ago and there was a cliffhanger ending back there. Something strange gets Shelley's attention though, so he wanders towards the noises at night, while Vera looks like she's actually making progress and caring about her date, as if he's a real human being. But then, she drops the man's wallet into the lake and has to retrieve it. But then it seems he's coming back. Only, now he's wearing different clothes, is taller, his body weight has changed, and he's completely bald. Making for the first kill by Jason wearing the iconic hockey mask. Also, evidently the only one where he actually shoots someone to kill them. I mean, unless there's a Dark Horse comic somewhere called Jason Finds a Minigun. Gotta keep up that body count though, so after Andy and Debbie are finished fucking, she goes to take a shower while he walks around on his hands to get them a couple of beers. Beers he doesn't even get, having no free hands, so let's put a stop to this.
I can't hear you.
He was walking around on his hands because, well, the actor could do it, and well, it's not like they wrote anything interesting about Andy anyway. Jason's quick with that mop, though, or Debbie just doesn't care about the big puddle of blood where her boyfriend used to be. With that in mind, she returns to bed. But alas, a homage is afoot!
Great shortcut, Rick.
Stabbing through the bed into the victim, just like in the original. Also, cutting away in only a couple of seconds before we can even see that much of it, kinda like part 2. Chris and Rick are still plenty far from home, so let's move on to someone else who's far out. That's not how popcorn entertainment's supposed to work. Chili comes in shortly after. That way, when the power supply goes out, she can order Chuck to go down to the basement and check on the fuse box, leaving her completely alone in the kitchen for a scare.
Nice makeup job. Stop fooling around, man.
Ah, look on the bright side, Shelley. You must have been a pretty damn good actor if none of them can even tell the difference at this point. So he dies as he lived, with nobody giving a fuck. Chuck, on the other hand, gets chucked into the fuse box, killing him, and ruining all the work he did to fix it. This means Chili is the last one alive at the house, and now of course realizes that Shelley is actually dead. Running around for help, she soon learns that everybody else is also very dead, and now she's running for her life. Oh god, not wind! Quick, run! What could be worse than wind? Being impaled by a fireplace poker. And that'll do it. But, it was red hot. Wouldn't that cauterize the wound? But I'm just saying, it's not like it's something she's gonna bleed out from. We're not taking thermodynamics into account, though. It's just another means of creatively killing someone for the slasher movie. Now that all of their friends are dead, Chris and Rick return to the homestead and immediately realize something is wrong. Not from all the blood and bodies, they're nowhere to be found, but the problems with the lights and the lack of people walking around is just concerning.
Is everything all right?
Well, at least Rick figured out why the hell everything looks so strange around here. And it's not the best way to find out, but it's quick. Much like his death. No eyeballs! No! No! Chris doesn't even notice any of that anyway. She just goes back inside and starts slowly investigating things, eventually realizing that a bathtub full of bloody clothes is probably not the best thing to discover. Better than all those bodies she trips across shortly after anyway. After all of this, she runs back inside to hide, but damn that wind fucking around and opening all these windows! If only Rick were here to close them.
Rick! Help me!
Now that's commitment. This also reveals to Chris a terrible truth, that it's that horrible man from the woods who has come to kill her. This calls for your classic run, wait, get scared, and run again strategy. She does try the car, but because of that gas siphoning earlier, it hardly makes it 100 feet before giving out. Don't worry though, they've got a reserve tank! Fuck you anyway, the wooden bridge suddenly breaks. Eventually she runs to hide inside the barn, and Jason follows, trapping them both inside. That's not to say Chris is beaten yet. And as far as climactic battles go, this was better. I mean, yeah, Jason still gets knocked out very easily, but at the same time, he still looked like he knew how the fuck to fight, and it was reasonable that she would be scared of him. His sudden slumber gives Chris enough time to wrap the convenient rope around Jason's neck and hang the motherfucker. The problem with this plan, of course, is she was trying to hang Jason Voorhees. Yeah, looks like we dropped the Jack Black this time around, and it's just Toxie with a mix of John Merrick. Cornered, all hope is lost, and Chris will surely be killed. Except being hacked to death with a cleaver ain't shit, and Ollie is back and ready to save the day! Well, I guess first you don't succeed. Making Ali's second coming kinda pointless, but at least it padded out the time it took Chris to realize there's a fucking axe right here, and how they work. But damn if this guy isn't really fucking stubborn in this movie. Not quite at the levels he'll be at later though, so eventually the massive cranial injury does subdue him, allowing Chris to take the canoe out into the lake to go to sleep. I still find that is a very odd decision to come to, but when she wakes, pretty much everything in existence spooks her, but not quite as much as seeing that Jason is still alive and very happy to see her. Except then he's gone, and the door he broke has fixed itself. And then? Okay, first of all, how the hell did Pamela end up in the lake? Second, how did she regrow her head? It's because Chris is simply out of her fucking mind here. Yeah, she survived the night and escaped the wrath of Jason, but it's kinda doubtful she'll be seeing much time outside of a padded room after this. Also, Jason looks like he's really dead, but, you know, we've seen that before. Anyway, that was Friday the 13th, Part 3. And, that was really unimaginative. It's got all your basic trappings of a slasher movie. You have your handful of teenagers to young adults, drugs, alcohol, sex, a secluded area it all takes place in, and an unstoppable killing machine taking all of them out in various ways. The problem, though, is that there's a distinct lack of depth to this movie. I mean, the characters were okay, but very few of them felt all that fleshed out. The stoner was a stoner. His girlfriend was his girlfriend. And, wasn't there much else to say? I think she had an inhaler around her neck, so the character might have had asthma, which is something, but we never saw them go any deeper into that. Now, even though Debbie was pregnant with Andy's child, that had no bearing on anything outside of a line near the beginning. Shelley, I think, was the most well-fleshed-out character, which is surprising, as the comic relief jerk tends to be just a spare I don't care about in the big scheme of things. Thing is, he had things to do and aspirations and motivation above and beyond that of any other character on screen for that long. Overall, I'd say Friday the 13th Part 3 is about as simple as they come. There are some decent parts to it, and it does its job, but the combination of the generic storytelling with the most gimmickly, constantly throwing shit in your face 3D cinematography I simply don't like, hampers the experience. Coming in at 2 boys who cried, "Oh my god, they're killing me!" out of 5. It deals with the ending better than the second, but I still think Part 2 as a whole was far more entertaining to watch. Thank you all for watching. I've been Decker Shadow, and remember, Anaglyphic 3D. Not even once.
Heavy shit.